Okay, so go ahead and find yourself in a comfortable position, whether that be sitting or lying down. And we'll just kind of spend the next 3 minutes breathing and getting here, which I know we're all in our own spaces, but we've all been doing something before this. And so kind of focusing on being in this moment, this time, the next hour is just your time to breathe, be in your body, be with yourself, your pet, who he's heard the cue, so he's joining. And go ahead and just notice your body and begin to notice all the parts of your body that are touching whatever is underneath you. And so if you're seated, maybe you begin to notice what your seat feels like, notice what your hips feel like. Begin to kind of move up your body in the noticing, and close your eyes if you'd like to. Not necessarily changing your breath at all, but just paying attention to what it feels like to breathe. Noticing what an inhale feels like in your side body. And notice what an exhale does for your shoulders. Maybe on your next exhale, you consciously see if you can move them farther away from your ears, letting them just rest and hang. And then on your next inhale breath, take an inhale through your nose and see if you can inhale and fill up your belly. Take the biggest inhale you've taken maybe all day and just hold it for a second or two. And then take an open mouth exhale and just sigh it out. See if you can let some sort of tension or stress you're holding on to go. And do that 3 times on your own, at your own pace, inhaling through your nose and exhaling out your mouth, trying to consciously just relax and be here. And then as you become more aware of your breath and maybe more aware of your shoulders, go ahead and we'll just take 5 shoulder rolls, kind of inhaling and lifting our shoulders up to our ears and rolling them back. And as you roll them back, see if you can feel that opening in your chest area. Maybe you've been sitting today or just doing forward focused things, and we don't often move our shoulders up and back throughout our day. So see if you can just do that a few times. Inhaling, exhaling them back. And then once you finish that, go ahead and decide which side of your neck you think feels more tense, and drop the opposite ear to the opposite shoulder. So if the left side of your neck feels pretty tense, go ahead and drop your right ear to your right shoulder. And just see what it looks like or feels like to look down at your shoulder and then up at the ceiling, noticing what that does to the opposite side of your neck. And taking a breath, imagining that you can just scrape off any tension on that side of your neck. And so I have my right ear dropped to my right shoulder, and I'm kind of visualizing just scraping any tension off with my breath off the left side of my neck, down my left shoulder. Maybe you just, in your mind, trace it down your left arm, just letting it go. And then on your next breath, look down towards that shoulder, drop your chin into your chest, and then just look down at your belly. So dropping your head straight down, feeling into the back side of your neck. Noticing what it's like to intentionally look down, not necessarily down at a phone or a screen or a keyboard, but just allowing your head to hang here for a few breaths. Again, trying to move your ear or your shoulders farther from your ears. Let them go. Let the shoulders and arms just hang. And continuing that tracing across your chest, dropping the opposite ear to the opposite shoulder. So for me, it's my left ear to my left shoulder now. Letting tension go out the right side of my neck, right top of my shoulder. And again, experimenting with looking down at your shoulder and up to the ceiling, seeing what feels better, what you need. And these neck rolls are something that if we spend a lot of our time at a desk or seated, We can often accidentally begin to allow our shoulders to rise up to our ears. And just taking a few minutes and doing this a couple times throughout the day can really help if you experience like neck tension, shoulder tension, migraines. It's just kind of a nice reset. And then in your own time, when you feel like you've gotten enough stretch on this side, go ahead and continue that roll all the way around so that this time you're dropping your head back and looking up to the ceiling, stretching out the front of our necks. And this is a really strange stretch for many of us because it's opening, but it's also really constricting if we're needing to swallow or anything. But see what it feels like to just let your head dangle back. Maybe you look side to side, see what that does for your neck. Just feel the full range of your neck and your shoulders. And then on your next inhale breath, bring your head back up, look straight ahead with your eyes open or closed. And just take any more neck rolls you need for the next 30 seconds, or just spend the next 30 seconds breathing in stillness before we move into our first pose together. All right, and before we move on, we'll just take one more inhale and exhale together. And so inhaling, just bringing your hands to your heart center, palms together, closing your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And we'll just do a quick volcano breath. And this is something I like to do to just really set the space and really fully arrive here. And so on an inhale breath, we'll just have our hands together and kind of push them upwards as if we're kind of a volcano, inhaling and lifting our arms above our shoulders, stretching them as high as they can. And then on an exhale breath, what we'll do at whatever pace you want is we'll just open our palms and trace our hands out to the side and come down to the sides. So as you exhale, just trace your hands all the way down to the sides, imagining that you're kind of creating this little bubble for yourself to practice. Nothing else is allowed in. All the stress is out there. It'll be there later. And then moving into our first pose, which will be toes pose, which is a yin pose that definitely helps learn what I mean by riding the edge of sensation. And so as we get into this, if this is too much for you, I'll give us a couple options, but we're just going to come onto our hands and knees for just a moment, not necessarily into a full tabletop position, but just coming onto your hands and knees enough so that you can have your knees underneath your hips and just tuck your toes. And then we're just going to sit back onto our heels with our toes tucked. And so your knees can be together or slightly apart, but you'll just set your sit bones back onto your feet with your toes tucked under, and make sure that all 10 of your toes are tucked underneath. And you'll begin to really feel all of everything in the bottom of your feet. And so this really stretches out the bottoms of our feet in a way that we don't often do, especially not both feet at the same time. And for the next 3 minutes, I want you to just focus on breathing in this pose and seeing if you can just ride the edge of sensation here and just see if you can stay in this pose. If this is causing pain for you, you can lean forward and place your hands on the mat and just kind of leave your toes tucked, but sink back a little bit. But if it's okay for you, go ahead and just see if you can sit, maybe having your spine all the way upright, imagining that there's a line drawing from your sit bones up to the top of your head. You're straight up. You can have your eyes open or closed, but if you have them open, just pick something in front of you that you can focus on. And that might help you with riding the edge of this strange sensation and staying in this pose. And then I like to do a visualization practice in this pose because it can be really intense, of imagining that I'm kind of drawing up any peace and strength from the ground up through my feet. And that's what's causing the sensation. And I'm just integrating it into my body through my breath. So I'm bringing in this really intense feeling and letting it flow out through my body and fill me up with any peace that I need. And since today is the last day of Women's History Month, I also wanted to share a quote that's been on the front of the journal that I've been using for the last 6 months or so, that I think is really powerful about women coming into our own power. And it's by Elizabeth Gilbert. And it says, "The women I love and admire for their strength and grace did not get that way because shit worked out. They got that way because shit went wrong and they handled it. They handled it in 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different days, but they handled it. And I think that pose is especially appropriate for this moment in time, but also for this pose, because sometimes this pose feels like handling it, working through something that sucks. But you'll make it through. We'll move through several other poses, and then you'll move on into whatever's left for your day. So we've got about another minute here. Just breathe. See if a deep breath can help you stay a little bit longer. And notice how a deep breath can calm your nervous system down and ask your body to just be here. And if you need to move, just move. You know what you need. We've all made it through all of our hardest days up to now. And on your next breath, go ahead and plant your hands in front of you if they're not already, and then slowly rise yourself back up. Untuck your feet one at a time and just pitter patter your toes on the ground, kind of waking back up the opposite side of your feet, letting that blood flow come back through. Maybe you feel some tingles. That's normal. And then our next pose that we'll come into will be saddle pose. And so for saddle pose, from this hands and knees position, what you'll do is spread your knees a little bit wider than your hips, and then sit yourself back so that you're now sitting between your heels. So your heels are on either side of your hips. Your knees are both bent. And if you have pain in your knees, you can do this with one leg at a time. But to do saddle pose the full way with both knees bent, what you'll do is have your sitting between your heels, and then begin to put your hands palms down on the mat behind you and just walk your hands back. And if you would like to have a prop behind you, such as a bolster, going to be just kind of lying back, you're welcome to have a bolster or a pillow that you can just drape yourself back over, or just rest your forearms on and just lean back. Maybe you want to come all the way down into lying flat on that prop or flat on the ground, depending on what your body needs and what you want to do today. Just allow yourself to come back, allow the front part of your hips to open, maybe the front part of your abs to open a little bit. And then just decide if you would like to add a chest opener to this. If you would, you can take your arms out to the side, or you can take them up over your head, and just allow the entire front side of your body to just feel open. And saddle pose can be a really powerful, intense hip opener that can allow circulation to improve, can allow us to just be in an opposite way if we've been sitting all day with our hips. And it also can just allow our lower back to relax and rest a little bit. So just let yourself wiggle around in any way that you need, and then settle in where you can be for a couple minutes. Coming back to your breath, using each inhale to make space in your body and each exhale to let something go. Doing that open mouth exhale can really allow you to just sink in and rest and relax a little bit more. With the last minute in this pose, see if you can let anything else release on your next exhale, knowing that you only have to hold this pose for a little bit longer, but maybe there's something that wants to soften in your body. Another fun add-on to this pose can be massaging the bottom of your feet after toes pose, just thanking them for making it through, gripping onto them. Take 3 more breaths in this saddle pose. And then begin to press your elbows into the mat so that you can come back up to forearms if you had yourself slide back. And then maybe come up to palms. And then press yourself up slowly. In yin poses, we want to be really careful about coming out of things as slowly as we got into them so that we don't overly rubber band our bodies and snap back too fast. And from here, we're just going to come into a butterfly forward fold. And so we'll just slowly lift up and adjust so that we can bring our knees out from underneath us and just plant your feet on the mat so that your feet are planted and your knees are up to the ceiling. Put your hands behind yourself and just windshield wiper your knees side to side for a few minutes or a few breaths. Just letting your hips release, get that blood flow going back through your legs before we move in an opposite way. And then when you're ready, just come up to sitting and bring the soles of your feet together in front of you so that your soles of your feet are together and your knees are out wide like butterfly wings. And you have a couple options here. You can decide how close you want your feet to be to your body. The closer that they are, the more intense the hip stretch will be. So feel free to push them out farther away from you if you'd like. And then you can either place your hands out in front of you, in front of your feet, or you can hold on to your ankles. And we'll just take an inhale breath, kind of rolling our shoulders up and back, opening up our chest again for just a minute. And then on an exhale breath, just fold yourself over your feet. You can walk your hands out or leave them grabbing onto your ankles. And just walk them out as far as you'd like, adjusting your feet closer or farther from your body, whatever you need tonight. And then just see if you can come to a place where you can rest your hands or your forearms or your palms, and you can drop your head down and just drape yourself over your feet, letting your outer hips stretch out, your inner thighs. Just see where you can come to that you can just dangle and be while also definitely feeling some sensation. Maybe on an inhale breath, you breathe into your upper back, noticing how it expands. And on an exhale breath, you ask your body to just fold over a little bit farther. If you'd like to place a block on the mat in front of you to catch your forehead, sometimes it can feel really nice to have that sensation on the center of our forehead between our eyes. If you work on a screen all day, pressing your forehead into a block and just kind of rolling your head side to side can release some sensation or tension in your head that can sometimes lead to eye strain. It also can just be nice to close your eyes if you've had to have them open all day. So as we move into the sunnier part of the year, it's important to just let your eyes adjust as well. So move around in any way, just find your pose, and just settle in on your next exhale. And take 3 more breaths. Maybe you want to use the next few exhales to see if you can sink a little bit farther for a couple breaths. And then begin to plant your hands, if you had them, out in front of you, pressing into the ground, walking yourself back up slowly, being careful with your back, bringing your head up last. And just rolling our shoulders up and back again, letting them come back down our back, opening that chest back up. We're just going to come into a couple wide-legged seated stretches. And so you can choose which leg you'd like to be bent and which leg you'd like to have out first, but I'm going to keep my left leg bent and have my right leg out kind of at a 45-degree angle from my body, outstretched in front of me. And then we're just going to have a little bit of a twist here. So right now, making sure that you're kind of pointing directly forward, taking an inhale breath and then twisting so that your upper body is facing over the outstretched leg. So for me, it's my right leg. And then if you would like to have a prop where you can rest your head on your leg, you're welcome to do that. But we're just going to take an inhale breath. And again, we're going to fold forward this time over our outstretched leg. And this time it'll be stretching into the opposite side body along our back. And so as I inhale, I'm sitting up. And then as I exhale, I'm just draping myself over my right leg, which is outstretched, noticing how tight the left side of my back is. And if you'd like to bring this into a twist as well, you're welcome to plant, for me, it would be my right arm along the outside of my right leg and drape my left arm over, kind of arcing over so that I'm twisted, but looking in a different direction. Or you can just drape your upper body over your knee, whatever stretch your body is asking for today. Using your exhales to see where you can soften, your inhales to see where you can make space. Sometimes it can feel nice to bring your left hand to the outside of your right foot, kind of grabbing onto that, pulling it back towards you to stretch out that shoulder a little bit. Coming back to your breath, if you notice that your mind is distracting you, thinking about what you did before, what you have to do after. Using your breath as a guide to keep you here in this moment. Maybe you want to count your breath, inhaling to a count of 4 or 5, and exhaling to a count of 5 or 6 to encourage your body to just release and relax and focus. And on your next breath, if you have your hands gripping onto your body in any way, just allow them to come back on either side of that outstretched foot. Press into the mat. Slowly walk yourself back up so that your spine is upright, being really mindful of your side body and your back. And once you find yourself back up in a neutral spine, bring both feet back into that butterfly shape for a second. And just flap your butterfly wings for a moment, just resetting the blood flow in your legs. noticing if each side feels different or if they feel similar. And then bringing in the leg that was just outstretched. So I'll have my right knee bent, stretch out my left leg at a 45-degree angle for my body. Taking an inhale breath and twisting over the outstretched leg. And then exhale, walking my hands out on either side of that foot, deciding if I want to plant my left arm and bring my right arm over my head, or if I just want to drape myself over my knee. And in these two-sided poses, it's always important to remember that while our bodies can look the same on both sides, they are not. And so if you're noticing one side is tighter than the other, don't judge that. Just be aware of it. Maybe wonder to yourself tomorrow how you can bring more balance into your body throughout the day. Maybe if you find yourself sitting with one leg bent, you can make sure that you shift that up every few minutes or every hour. Maybe noticing if you have your workspace set up in such a way that you're always looking in one direction. Can you adjust that or shift things up throughout your day so that your body can feel more balanced? Tension doesn't build up on one side. Or maybe that's just how your body is. None of these are problems. All of these are just things to notice. Softening something on your next exhale and just dropping your head, letting yourself be here. On your next exhale, can you allow your forehead to move a little bit closer to your knee, asking the side body and the back body if they can stretch just a little bit farther. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Either is okay. And then planting your hands on either side of that outstretched foot, pressing them into the ground as you inhale and slowly walk yourself back up to an upright spine. Taking an inhale breath, rolling the shoulders up and back one more time. And then bringing your feet back in together, flapping your butterfly wings again, seeing if maybe things feel a little bit more balanced now. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. That's okay. And we're just going to come back onto our hands and knees for just a moment and flow through a couple cat-cows before we transition into a new sequence with a few lunges. So placing your hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. Inhale and drop your belly and look up to the sky. And then exhale, press your hands into the mat and arc your spine. Just feeling into the full motion, wave motion of your spine, letting anything crack that needs to crack or pop or release. And do this a couple times on your own, looking over each shoulder at each hip, maybe seeing what it feels like to wag your tail as you're also doing cat-cow. And then when you're ready, moving your hands just a palm print forward, tucking your toes under. Don't worry, we're not coming back to toes pose. And then lifting your hips up, sending them up to the sky, and coming into downward facing dog. And this might be your first downward dog of the day, of the week, maybe of the month.
But see what your body needs here in this downward facing dog. Maybe you want to bend one knee at a time, stretch out the backside of your legs. Maybe you need to shake your head. Let anything that's in your mind just dump out the top of your head on an exhale breath. But wherever you are, just see if you can move around a little bit and then come to a place of stillness. Pressing your hands into the mat, seeing if you can get your hips a little bit higher, maybe sink your heels a little bit closer to the ground. And then we're going to come into three-legged dog as a transition to get into lizard and pigeon pose. And so we'll start with our left leg planted. Inhale and lift up your right leg up to the sky. If you'd like to scorpion this and open it up into another hip stretch, you're welcome to bend your right knee, kind of open up your hip to the sky. Take a breath or two here, or just stay in three-legged dog. And then on your next inhale breath, inhale and bring that right leg through, planting in the right foot between the hands. Now you're in a lunge. And then we're just going to lower our back knee down to the mat. We're actually just going to do a low lunge tonight. And so if you'd like to stay in this low lunge, you're welcome to. If you'd like to try lizard pose, you can move both of your hands to the inside of that right leg and kind of heel toe the right foot out a little bit to the side. This is a really deep hip stretch. And then if you'd like to take this even farther, you are more than welcome to come down onto your forearms or a block on the inside of your right leg. And some people even like to lift up their right foot and kind of splay open that foot, which is a different hip sensation than my body's interested in today. So wherever you are, just in this low lunge lizard-like shape, just stay here, use a couple breaths. If your back knee is feeling uncomfortable, it can feel nice to tuck your toe sometimes. I'm not sure totally what that does, but it definitely changes the sensation in my body and makes it more comfortable some days. So just breathe into this hip compression and hip opening on opposite sides of your body. And find a comfortable place or a place that you're willing to be in for the next few minutes. And then we'll shift into pigeon pose on this side. Imagining that a deep breath here can open up your left hip and scrape out any tension also from your right hip as well. We've got 5 more breaths here in this pose on this side. Take them as you need. Make it more intense if you'd like to, or just focus on staying. Either one is what you need. And once you feel complete, go ahead and just bring your right hand back to the outside of your right foot, walk it back in between those hands. And then we're just going to transition right into pigeon pose on this side. So you'll just continue walking your foot across your mat so that you can drop your knee down, and you'll definitely probably need to drop your knee down and bring your right heel in a little bit closer to that left hip. And then leaving your left leg outstretched behind you. And for some of us in pigeon pose, we like to have support underneath our right hip so that it's not just dangling in the air. So if you need to put a block, bolster, rolled up blanket under your right hip for your body, go ahead and do that. But then we'll just allow ourselves to drape ourselves over our right leg, coming forward.
And so using your next few breaths to just come down onto forearms. Maybe you want to come all the way down. Your chest wants to drape all the way to the mat or the floor. Dropping your head down if you'd like to. But just take this as a pose of sensation or a pose of rest. Adjusting your body into whatever it needs for the next 3 minutes. To just be here. Our hips can be full of a lot of things, and so pigeon pose can be a really intense emotional pose for some of us. And for some of us, it can only be that way sometimes. So whatever comes up for you, just see if you can keep your focus on your breath and allow your body to have what it needs, but don't push it farther than it wants to go tonight. And so if that means not doing this pose or coming to a figure 4 on your back, that's totally fine. And as we move from winter into spring and into summer, we're also moving from a time of spending more time than many of us have ever spent indoors in a winter into a new transition of getting back out there. And so I encourage you to use your yoga practice as a time to come back to yourself and come back to the peace that you might have found if you found some more of that in the last year, or just use your practice as a time to always remember that we have to spend time with ourselves to show up in ways with others. And yoga can be a great way to really personalize an hour, a couple times a week, to just love yourself, take care of yourself, and notice what you need. It can be really easy to forget about our own needs when we're just out and about, but it's important to always use our time to come back to ourselves as well. So spending a couple more breath cycles here in this pigeon pose on this side. Ask yourself if there's anything that you need this week. We're halfway through. We've got a few more days left. Is there anything else that you need, and how can you give that to yourself this week? Coming back up onto our palms, pressing our hands into the mat, and moving your hands into where they'll be for your downward dog, and then tucking your back left toes, pressing into the mat, and lifting your right leg back up, swinging it all the way back through into that 3-legged dog. Maybe scorpion pose is something that you want to do. Exiting this pose, maybe you want to draw some circles with your knee. Maybe you just want to come right back to downward dog and just be there for a breath or two, bending your knees or just staying in stillness. But take what you need and then meet back in downward dog. Noticing what feels different than before, what feels different on each side. And then once you found yourself in downward dog, we'll just plant our right leg, lift up our left leg to the sky, opening it up by bending your knee into the scorpion pose if you'd like to. Stretching that leg out and up towards the ceiling. And then on your next breath, swinging it through, bringing your left foot between your hands, top of your mat into a lunge, and then dropping that right knee down to the mat. Spending a breath here in this low lunge. And then moving both hands to the inside of your left foot, walking your left foot out the outside of the mat, coming into your version of lizard pose on this side, taking it as deeply or as sensationally as you prefer and your body needs. And remembering that whatever you need is what you need to do. There's not, in Yin practice, there's not an accomplishment of a certain pose. Any version of the pose is the pose. Taking time to breathe and be with yourself is the practice. So moving around as you need to, adjusting as you need to, and settling in on this side. And this side for me today is much harder than the other side. And so being okay with that, not judging ourselves, is a giant portion of this type of practice. these poses can look easier than they feel oftentimes. Coming back to your breath, if you ever lose focus or you notice that your breath is becoming shallow, take a couple deep breaths just to reset your nervous system. Remind yourself it's okay. And if it's not okay, come out of it and do something else. Got about a minute left here. Taking 3 more breaths on this side in lizard pose with our left leg forward. Maybe your right hip is screaming at you. When is this over? It's almost over. And then when you're ready, moving your left hand back to the outside of your left foot, heel toeing that left leg across your mat so that your left knee can come down, inching your heel as close to your hip as you need it to, adding any props underneath your left hip, adjusting your right leg as you need, and then coming into pigeon pose on this side. And again, this side might be very different. Take an inhale breath, stretch out your spine a little bit, maybe look up to the ceiling, and then walk your hands out in front of you or come down onto forearms and let yourself rest in pigeon pose on this side. And on your next breath, see what it feels like to take an inhale breath and imagine that you can inflate your upper back. Typically, on an inhale breath, we imagine inhaling and inflating our stomach. See what it feels like to imagine that you can breathe into your upper back. And then as you exhale, how can you let that go and let your heart sink a little bit closer to the mat, to the floor, to the earth? And going ahead and planting your hands back on the mat, pressing into your palms, pressing yourself back up. And then press your palms into the mat, tuck your right back toe under. Slowly lift up that left leg, bringing it back through, up to the sky, to three-legged dog or scorpion pose. Maybe drawing a few circles in the sky, moving that hip around. Then planting your left foot back by your right into downward facing dog. Pedal out your dog. Take a breath or two here, noticing how things feel. And then we'll just bend our knees and come down into tabletop position. Sit back on our heels and swing our feet out in front of us so that your feet are planted and your knees are pointed back up to the ceiling. And just lie yourself back on your back. And so just bring your knees into your chest and give yourself a hug for just a moment. And then we're going to shift into happy baby real quick. So spread your feet out wide, grab onto the outsides of your feet if you can. Pull your knees in towards your armpits, roll side to side for just a moment. Take a breath or two here. Switching from being face down to face up. Then we're just going to come into our final poses that'll just be a lying spinal twist before Shavasana. And so with your knees into your chest, there's a couple options here. I like to do this with eagle legs as a twist just because it gives me a different sensation. But if that doesn't work for you, feel free not to take it. But I'll just plant my feet back on the mat, lift up my right leg, cross it over my left leg so that my legs are crossed a little bit, lift back up my feet, and then drop my knees over to the left side of the mat, keeping your shoulders on the mat, keeping your chest pointed up to the ceiling, but allowing your legs to fall over to the left side. Deciding where you'd like your arms to be. You can add more of a chest stretch if you'd like by stretching your arms out to the side or having them in goalpost arms. Or you can place your left hand on your legs and your right hand either on your side body or just down at your side or up by your ear. Just allow this twist to wring out anything else that you need to let go of. This can also stimulate our digestive system and can just kind of get things moving and flowing around in our core, the center of our body. So you might notice after class the effects of that. That's normal. See if you can let something go on your next exhale. Settle in this. Let your body just be held by itself and your breath in the mat. Take 3 more breaths on this side. Seeing if you can twist a little bit deeper. Allow your legs to fall a little bit farther to the left. Your right shoulder to stay a little bit closer to the mat. And then if you have your legs crossed, go ahead and uncross them. Leave them stacked a little bit, and then activate your core. On your next inhale breath, bring your knees back up to center. Maybe planting your feet on the mat for a moment, dropping your knees in towards one another with your feet spread wide. Take a breath here. And then bringing your feet back together. This time we're going to drop our knees to the right. So if you'd like to cross your legs, Keep your right foot planted, lift your left leg up, cross it over, and then allow your knees to fall over to the right side this time. Keeping your left shoulder as close to the mat as you can, your chest pointing up to the ceiling. Spending just another minute here in this twist. Asking your body if it would like to soften anywhere. If there's anything that it's gripping that it doesn't need to. Taking an inhale through your nose and an open mouth exhale, just release your jaw. We often clench our jaws without noticing it. And so throughout tomorrow, as you are noticing the different sides of your body, also notice if you're clenching your jaw, and consciously a couple times, just open your mouth, maybe yawn on purpose. Just let your jaw relax. Take an inhale breath and uncross your legs, leaving them stacked if you had them crossed. Exhale. On your next inhale, bring your knees back up to center. Plant your feet on the mat. And then we're just going to come through a bridge pose on our way to Shavasana. And so if you like to do this pose with a block and you have that nearby, grab it. If not, no worries. And so planting your feet on the mat with your knees up to the ceiling, just press your feet into the mat and lift your hips up to the sky so that you're lifting your hips off of the mat. And if you have a block or a prop nearby, go ahead and slide that underneath you so that it comes to your sacrum. And then rest your back on that lower back, being really mindful of where that placement of that prop is. And just notice what it feels like to shift our bodies into this position. This can be a hip opener similar to saddle pose, but it can also just allow for any sort of digestive or pelvic discomfort that we're feeling to just reset in a unique way. And if you like to deepen this pose or do this pose as a pose on its own, you're always welcome to stretch out your legs out in front of you, maybe both of them or one at a time. And just allow things to just release. So just spend a couple breaths here in this bridge pose. And when you're ready, just plant your feet back on the mat. If you stretch them out, lift your hips back up. Whenever you're ready, drop your hips to the mat. Stretch your legs out. And then drape your arms either down to your sides or bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your chest. And just spend our last few minutes here when you're in Shavasana, just resting, not asking our breath or our bodies to move or change or adjust in any way. And so when you find yourself to Shavasana on your back, just close your eyes. Remember what it is that invited you to spend this time with yourself today. Thank yourself for doing that and just rest. I'll let you know when it's been a few minutes. Guide us through a final breath and on to the rest of our day. And as we spend our last minute in Shavasana, I'm just going to read that quote that we started class with as we close out Women's History Month, move into spring, and move into a new season of a lot of things. So again, this is from Elizabeth Gilbert. And it says, "The women I love and admire for their strength and grace did not get that way because shit worked out. They got that way because shit went wrong and they handled it. They handled it in 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different days, but they handled it." And so take a couple breaths here again, thinking of something that you have handled. We've all had 1,000 different things come our way over the last year, and we've handled all of them, and we've made it here. So go ahead and begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Come back to your body. And roll over when you're ready to one side. Spend a moment in a fetal position, curling your knees into yourself if that's comfortable for you. And then when you're ready, press yourself up into a comfortable seat. And we'll close our practice with a breath together. And so once we're back up in a seat, we'll just do one final shoulder roll. So inhale, bring your shoulders up to your ears. Exhale, roll them back. And rest your hands wherever you would like. Just close your eyes, take an inhale breath. Open mouth exhale. And you have now completed the month of March and a final yoga practice. So thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for taking this time for yourself, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.